It's interesting to be introduced using the story of the Wizard of Oz, given that one of the main plot points is that the house landed on a person. So when we talk about disruption, unfortunately, someone usually dies. Ned Group, thank you very much. Hopefully it's not you. First of all, thank you very much for spending your evening here with us, Heavy Chef and me personally. I haven't been to South Africa before. I've been here for about 12 hours, as a matter of fact. Came in this morning, yeah. But walking around and coming from the airport, I can already tell that Joburg is kind of an amazing place, and everyone keeps telling me to go to Cape Town. So
that was the wrong thing to say.
When I say that everyone, I mean Fred was telling me that specifically.
Even worse thing to say.
And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is that of all the things you could be doing in wonderful South Africa, whether it's here in Joburg or in Cape Town, that you're spending your time with me, Volta, that's amazing. And so thank you, first of all. What I'm here to talk to you about today is a little bit of the story of where I came from, and hopefully take away some of the allure of entrepreneurship and make it a little bit more approachable. And if I accomplish that, then when you leave this tonight and tomorrow and every day you spend for the remainder of your life, the things that you'll work on, you'll have a view that says, well, I can do that too. It's not some poster child that's getting served up to you in an Instagram feed. It's actually just flesh and bones like everyone else. So I want to talk to you a little bit about building teams and why that is actually, in my opinion, the most important thing when you're trying to build important companies or change something in your life or the world. Some of you I've talked to a little bit about this, so you guys need to all be quiet. But I would love for you, anyone in the audience, to tell me what they think this number represents. That is according to the general census of 2016, the average lifespan of a person in South Africa. We know that your environment has a major impact, and of course genetics, on your lifespan. But that's it, 22,926.7. And in the US, actually, we have about 28,000. So it's like 6,000 more days to screw up. And, if you think about it, the first 15 to 18 years of your life, you're just learning. You're just kind of growing up, and figuring things out. That's like 5,000 days. And then the last 5, 10-ish years of your life, you're kind of forgetting everyone you know while you prepare to depart. That's another 5,000 days. I know it's a little bit harsh, but that's just what it is now. And what you do in the middle with those 10 to 12,000 days, well, that's what's important. And more than what you do, with whom you do it, I would contend, is really important. And that's what I want you to think about as we all chat today, as you think about where you are in your number. A lot of people come and they ask me, Niket, how do I build a startup? How do I sell a company to Google? And in fact, that's probably why you're here, because why would you randomly talk to someone berating you about how little time you have left on the earth? That's not fun at all. And if I knew that answer, I would just send it to you in an email, or I'd just be doing that over and over again. But the truth is I don't. And so the reason why I like to talk about time, building teams, and who you work with is because this is reliable information that you'll probably use in your day-to-day life. Can I get a show of hands? How many people plan on working with another human between now and when you're dead? What's crazy is like half the people are like, no. So someone really got ahead on the robotics automation system. Like, you have a great company coming up. The truth of the matter is that building companies, even starting companies and also working within companies is really hard. Paul Graham, who's kind of a philosopher, startup guy in San Francisco, he started Y Combinator. He says startups mostly die because teams and resources run out, one of the two. And usually teams that don't have resources, they're automatically set to fail. And his point is if you can just survive with the right people, then you might have the opportunity to succeed in some capacity. And at the end of the day, a company, we think about Google's or Ned Group, these massive entities, are nothing but human beings. Just a bunch of them, nothing more, nothing less. And that's what makes them amazing. So I'm going to tell you about one of these companies. This is a company called Punched. And it is actually a company that me and my co-founder started. And this is a photo of us in 2011 on top of my roof in San Francisco. And you can see me on the left, and Reed Morse in the middle, the great-great-great-great-grandson of Samuel L. Morse, the creator of the digital language, and on the right, Xander, our designer. So we had met actually through university, and we were in the early days of building when the iPhone and Android phones had just kind of come out and started to take a hold. And we believed that computers in everybody's pockets would fundamentally alter how the world works. Surprise, surprise, right? But at the time, people thought we were crazy. In fact, when we went and we were talking to venture capitalists, most of my conversation was explaining to them how it was likely that those types of devices would become prevalent. So think about that. In 2010, 2011, to raise money for our company, we would have to convince people that actually iPhones were going to be a big deal. Today, the beauty of being an entrepreneur is that none of those challenges exist. You can just start building stuff today and send it to anyone in the world immediately, which is kind of an amazing thing. Punched was trying to solve a very simple problem, which was to put those buy 10, get 1 free cards you get at coffee shops and other places onto your phone. And the reason why I wanted to solve that problem is so that I could then log into the database and give myself 1,000 free Jamba Juices. So yeah, in a way, Punch started because we were planning on committing fraud. It turns out that there was actually a business behind, well, we're college students, broke college students, are kind of conniving types. And how it happened was that it turns out that a lot of businesses actually wanted to connect with their customers at a loyalty level, and customers didn't want to carry around massive wallets like George Costanza, for those of you that watch Seinfeld. So we built this company, and we actually went to raise money. So you can see here, Reed is actually giving the photo that I showed you earlier up to a group of investors, similar in a room like this, and you can see me over there. And we had a very funny way of building it, which was that when we were pitching for money, we both were so nervous to ask people for money for this idea because we thought it was ridiculous. And what we did was we both learned the speech. And then right before we went up, we just quickly went rock, paper, scissors. And whoever won or lost had to go and kind of do it. And so you can see him up there, and we didn't have time to be anxious or scared. And that night, actually, we were able to convince a series of investors to give us $150,000. And we were able to go and build a portion of our company and quickly expand it. By the time that we realized what was happening, we were already operating in 14 countries. We had 1,000 businesses on a waiting list trying to sign up for this service. We were new. It was exciting, but it was stressful and scary because nothing like this had been built before. There were no places to compare. My parents were like, "What do you do?" It was a very complicated, emotional journey. And we ended up getting acquired by Google, actually, who was looking to increase their connections for the people that use Google Maps to small businesses, understanding, what those small businesses do and how to connect those customers and go beyond just mapping. And we integrated most of our services into today, what you probably use as Google Wallet, which is now kind of GPay, and services like this. So that's kind of the arc of Punched, which was short and sweet, a couple of years. But the reason why I wanted to tell you this story is that, in theory, you're like, wow, this guy's a successful entrepreneur. But unfortunately, I don't think so. Because we ended up shutting down our service approximately 4 years after starting it. And there's a lot of reasons for it, but ultimately, when you're in a large company, you have to build the right tool for the right job, and we just couldn't get it done. And so the point that I'm trying to make right now is that many of you will try things, and some of you will find varied degrees of success. Some of you might even sell what you've made to someone else and have a great resume, maybe even come and give a talk. But what persists beyond all of those things is your team. So this is Xander Reed and I at Xander's wedding. We're his groomsmen. And, I couldn't have imagined that these two people that I met randomly right after school would become such close confidants and builders with me. And our friendship to this day persists. So what is it about specific types of teams that make them special and capable of building things that most people thought were insane? I have another question for y'all. Can anyone tell me who these people are? The founders of Microsoft. And sorry, delayed. Close though. Will someone yell?
Someone said Larry.
Someone sees Steve. Where? Steve who? No, unfortunately it's not Steve Jobs. Okay, there it is. I heard it. Someone yelled that louder. That's right. This is more or less the founding team of Google in the late 90s. And you can see this is their team there. You can kind of see Sergey and Larry's hiding somewhere in there. This is 30 people. Think about a world without Google. These 30 people, about half of them stayed together working at Google until 2012. And between that time, Google's market cap went from $0 to $350 billion. The people that they decided to work with had profound effects, not only on each other, but ultimately the world. Who they selected, how they found them, those were some of the most important things. And in fact, one of their strongest capabilities as a company. Today we think of Google as many things, but to me I see them just as sets of individuals that went and built the various parts of it that today we look as the giant world-changing entity. And that's really all ultimately it is. And I learned that lesson a second time when I went to Flipkart, which was, for those of you that don't know, kind of an e-tailer in India that's similar to Amazon. And when we were at Google, me and my boss, Puneet Soni, went and where he was the chief product officer and I was his chief of staff running the product group. Now, India is a really intense place. You know, when we talk about the United States, I've given you an example of Punched and Google. They're very lucky. They started in a homogenous, English-speaking, high GDP per capita nation. So as builders, we had all the benefits of entering a place with a huge amount of infrastructure and capability for people to buy things. When I went to India, it was actually a very humbling experience as a builder because it's the opposite. And it's what I suspect most of you will feel as you try to approach Africa as a whole, as a place to build for. The internet penetration in India in 2015 was 150 million smartphone users. Today, just to put that in perspective, there's over 670 million people under the age of 26. Every single one of them will have a phone. The mobile internet users was 200 million. A service called Geo, which is a extremely cheap data service that was rebuilt from folks out of Reliance, is basically making the entire country automatically mobile data first. These were things that we didn't even have at Flipkart when I was there. Whoa. Flipkart started selling books similar to Amazon. By the time we joined, we had 30 million different products. And in India, what's complicated is everybody loves a deal. It's part of their culture. And you might know that if you ever try to sell anything to an Indian. Like, how much is that again? No. But it turns out that's actually an insane computer science problem. When you have 30 million products and a fluctuating price, the permutations involved with that would require more compute power than there is available on planet Earth. So it turns out that just trying to sell stuff to people that are trying to actively buy anything is a computer science problem for the ages. Additionally, the other challenge was most of the money came in cash. Approximately 50% of our sales were cash on delivery. So are people familiar with what cash on delivery is? In India, no. Well, yeah, okay, it's common here. In India, 2% of people at the time had any type of electronic payment system. And they also didn't trust electronic sellers. So here's how it would kind of work. Someone would buy something, I'm the delivery guy, I would go with it, and sometimes it was phones, right? So it's quite expensive. They would open the box, look at it, kind of see if they like it, and then give me cash. And then that cash would go back to a massive, kind of almost felt like you were in a drug room, but with a bunch of cash. And just to put that in perspective, though, we were doing billions of dollars in sales annually. So that means that we were holding hundreds of millions of dollars in cash coming back. And in India, the highest denomination was a 1,000 rupee note, which is the equivalent of about 15 US dollars. So in terms of volume, it's also 7x in just physical volume. And so this is a very complicated thing to do. In India, on top of that, you have massive socioeconomic diversity and diversity as a whole. There's 22 primary languages, 600 sub-dialects. There's Northern Indians and Southern Indians. They literally are different people. There's virtually zero infrastructure in tier 2, tier 3 cities. By the way, a tier 2 city in India has around 10 million people. Right? So if you're in a tier 1 like Bombay or Delhi, you're talking about 45 million people in one place. How do you build for that? So I planned and fully anticipated to go and build up a very sophisticated architecture, a ton of computers, and different types of algorithms that would solve for this problem. And what did I do when I got there? Well, I spent most of my time figuring out HR, culture, development process. I was back to building teams again. I almost was confused. Here I thought I was going to online all of India and basically give them all of the merits and all of the luxuries of the United States. But more or less what I was doing was refactoring the company. And why? Well, it turns out that people are very, very different. This is an interesting chart that I love to show people. And it also will give you a sense of some of the shock that I received moving to India and then trying to work there in a company, and what it meant. And at first, I'm going to tell you why it was a problem. And then I'm going to tell you why it actually was our solution. So one of the challenges in India is that people don't like to say no to anything. They'll just say yes, even if it's impossible. So I'd be like, hey, are we going to do that thing? And like Govinder would be like, yeah. And I would be like, what? Well, are you going to do it? And he's like, yeah, of course. It turns out that they effectively are more keen on avoiding confrontation. This is something I didn't understand and actually caused a tremendous amount of frustration in the first 12 months of my life in India. And they're also really emotionally expressive. So as you can see on the top left, you have Israel. So anyone that's worked with anyone from Israel knows that you're really going to know how they feel at all times. They will not tell you what they are not feeling. And the study showed that Americans more or less are kind of in the middle. There wasn't enough data actually I was looking it up on African census. So I emailed Erin Meyer to see if she had any data, but nothing had come back. But does anyone have any, who do you think emulates in South Africa? If you had to put yourself in a quadrant, could someone help me place you? Maybe we'll just pick one. Is it this are you with the Germans? Hands up if you're with the Germans. No? Hands up if you're with the Japanese. No. I have a feeling I know which way this is going. Hands up if you... Right, so hands up if you're with the Russians. Well, All right, so hands up if you're in the India bucket, right? Does that seem right? You're in the middle? Kind of with us, with the Americans? Seems like, well, at least we know that you're all talking about it, so you are at least somewhat confrontational. So, or everyone's not telling me the answer, so you are not confrontational. The point is that, at first I looked at our teams and I looked at our groups and I thought of it as really frustrating. It was tough to be in a company where you had essentially way different languages. People would be speaking Hindi, Tamil, they'd be speaking Kannada, and at first it just made it disorienting. But the truth of the matter was that the only way to build a company in India was to personalize. Our job was to build, better technology that meant that we relied on less infrastructure, to make sure that we supported as many languages as possible, which we started to do by using images instead of languages at all. We would localize. That was the only way it was going to work. And after I got past that idea of saying that diversity was actually a challenge and that actually it was the opportunity, I realized that any incumbent player outside of India coming in, like Amazon for instance, or one of the Chinese mega companies like JD, they were going to run through the same problem, which is that they came from homogenous societies. So they didn't understand the nuance and frankly the beauty of having a very complex personalization challenge for your country and the many people that are in it. And the fact that all of the people that were in the company who came from different backgrounds were actually telling us the answers of how to serve each of their individual customer sets. And in that, I learned that actually building products is easier than building product companies. And the difference is that, when we build software, which is what my background is in, but whatever you all do, it could be woodworking, it could be making beer, John, right? It's much easier to say, people want this product, so I'm just going to build that product. And it's actually much more complicated to develop a team and commit to a team that's going to help you build a product that evolves over time. And that's scary, and it's kind of frustrating and annoying. But what I will also tell you is that for Africa, just like we found in India, it's also going to be the only way out and probably your greatest opportunity because no one from the outside is going to be able to come and do that. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because any company you build, whether it's one that you're part of today, whether it's one that you plan on building tomorrow, your own, someone else's, it's just people, it's just time. Who you spend that time with and how you spend that time is the entire thing. And they are your opportunity, not your challenge. All right? Thank you.